Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me tonight. As you settle into your bed, letting the weight of the day slowly fall away, I'd like to take you somewhere peaceful, somewhere far from the rush and noise of modern life. Tonight, we're going to step back in time together, gently and quietly, to a place where life moved at the rhythm of the seasons and the rising and setting of the sun. We're going to visit the American frontier, not the frontier of cowboys and gunfights you might see in movies, but the real, quiet frontier. The frontier of families building homes with their own hands, the frontier of morning frost on cabin windows and the smell of wood smoke drifting across endless prairie grass. The frontier where each day unfolded with simple, necessary tasks, and where the evening brought a deep, well-earned rest. So close your eyes if you haven't already. Let your breathing slow, and let's walk together into this gentle place in history. Imagine, if you will, that you're standing on a small rise in the land. Below you stretches an open prairie, vast and quiet. The grass moves softly in the breeze, creating waves of green and gold that roll on and on toward the horizon. The sky above is enormous, larger than any sky you've seen in a modern city. It's the kind of sky that makes you feel small, but in a peaceful way, in a way that reminds you that you're part of something much bigger and slower than yourself. In the distance, you can see a thin trail of smoke rising straight up into the still air. That smoke is coming from a chimney, and that chimney belongs to a log cabin, sitting alone on this wide stretch of prairie. That cabin is home to a family much like any other, a mother, a father, perhaps a few children, maybe a grandparent or an older sibling. They came here from somewhere else, maybe from the east, where towns were growing crowded, maybe from across the ocean, carrying dreams of land and freedom. It doesn't really matter where they came from. What matters is that they're here now, building a life in this quiet, open place. Let's walk slowly toward that cabin. There's no hurry. The grass brushes softly against your legs as you move. The air smells clean. It smells of earth and grass and distance. You can hear birds in the sky above, calling to one another as they pass. Everything feels wide and open and calm. As we get closer, you begin to see the cabin more clearly. It's small, much smaller than most homes you know today. It's made entirely of logs, stacked horizontally one on top of the other. The logs are rough, still showing the marks of the axe that shaped them. The spaces between the logs have been filled with a mixture of mud and grass and moss, a process called chinking. This keeps the wind and rain from coming inside. The cabin has one door, made of thick wooden planks, and it has two small windows covered with oiled paper instead of glass, because glass is expensive and hard to come by out here. The roof is made of wooden shingles, split by hand from larger logs. It slopes gently down on either side, designed to let rain and snow slide off easily. From the center of the roof, that chimney rises. It's made of stone, carefully stacked and held together with the same mud mixture used for the chinking. The smoke that rises from it is thin and steady. Someone inside is keeping the fire going. This cabin is not just a building. This cabin is the result of weeks, sometimes months, of hard work. When the family first arrived on this piece of land, there was nothing here, just prairie, just grass and sky and wind. They had to build everything themselves. They chose a spot near a stream or a spring because water is life. They cleared a small area of land, they cut down trees if there were any nearby, or they hauled logs from miles away if there weren't. They shaped each log, they lifted each log into place, they mixed the mud and filled the gaps. They built the chimney stone by stone. They made the door and the windows and the roof. Every part of this cabin was touched by their hands, and now it stands here, solid, simple, home. Let's step closer to the door now. You can hear sounds from inside, the gentle crackle of fire, the soft murmur of voices, maybe the sound of something being stirred in a pot. These are the sounds of daily life, the sounds of a family going about their daily routines, winding down after a long day of work. But before we go inside, let's take a moment to walk around the cabin. Let's see what else is here, because a cabin like this is never alone. It's always surrounded by the other pieces of life that make survival possible. Behind the cabin, you see a small garden plot. The soil has been turned and planted. Rows of vegetables grow here: corn, beans, squash, potatoes, onions, carrots, maybe some herbs near the edge. The plants are green and healthy, though they require constant care. Weeds must be pulled, water must be carried from the stream, insects must be watched for. This garden will feed the family through the winter if they tend it well. Next to the garden is a small shed. It's even simpler than the cabin, just a rough wooden frame with a roof. Inside, tools are stored: a plow, a hoe, an axe, a saw, sacks of seed, coils of rope, everything the family needs to work the land. These tools are precious. They cannot be easily replaced out here, so they are cared for, cleaned after use, sharpened when needed, kept dry and safe. A little farther away, you see a pen made of split rails. Inside, a cow stands quietly, chewing cud. She is calm and familiar with this place. She provides milk each day, and that milk becomes butter and cheese. Nearby, chickens scratch in the dirt, pecking at seeds and insects. They provide eggs. And in the distance, you can see a small field where the family grows wheat or oats, grain that will be ground into flour. Everything here has a purpose. Everything here is part of the rhythm of survival. But it's not a desperate survival. It's a steady, patient survival, the kind that comes from knowing the land and knowing the seasons and knowing what needs to be done each day. As the evening light begins to soften and fade, you notice how quiet it is. There are no cars, no engines, no electrical hum, just the wind moving through the grass, just the distant call of a bird, just the sound of the cow shifting in her pen and the chickens settling down for the night. This quiet is something the people who live here know deeply. They wake to it each morning, they move through it each day, and they fall asleep to it each night. It's a quiet that allows you to hear your own thoughts, a quiet that makes space for rest. So let's go inside now. Let's see what life looks like within these log walls. You push open the wooden door. It's heavy, and it creaks softly on its leather hinges. Inside, the cabin is warm. The first thing you notice is the fire. It burns in the stone fireplace that takes up most of one wall. The flames are low and steady, giving off a gentle heat that fills the small space. The light from the fire flickers across the walls, making shadows dance softly. The cabin is one room, that's all. One single room where everything happens: cooking, eating, working, sleeping, everything. But it doesn't feel cramped. It feels cozy. It feels like a place where people know each other well and move around each other with ease. Against one wall, you see a bed. It's a simple wooden frame with a mattress made of a large cloth stuffed with straw or corn husks. On top of that, quilts are layered. Quilts made by hand, pieced together from scraps of fabric, each one representing hours of careful stitching. The quilts are thick and warm. They will be needed when winter comes and the cold seeps through the walls, even despite the fire. Against another wall, there's a table. It's rough, wood, handmade, sturdy. Around it are benches, also handmade. This is where the family eats their meals. This is where they sit together in the evening. This is where the children might practice their letters if they're...
As the night deepens and the frontier family rests in their log cabin, let's take our time and think about the mornings here. Because mornings on the prairie have a rhythm all their own, a gentle, necessary rhythm that begins long before the sun rises. Imagine waking in that cabin just as the first hint of light appears in the sky. It's still mostly dark. The air inside is cold. During the night, the fire has burned down to just a few glowing embers under their blanket of ash. Your breath makes small clouds in the chilly air, but beneath the quilts you are warm. The weight of the blankets presses down on you, comforting and heavy. From somewhere in the cabin, you hear movement. Someone is awake. It's usually the father or the mother, whoever has trained themselves to wake at this early hour. They rise quietly, careful not to wake the children just yet. Their feet touch the cold dirt floor, and they reach for the boots they left near the fire last night. The first task of every morning is the same: revive the fire. The father kneels down in front of the fireplace. He uses a stick to carefully push aside the ash covering the coals. Underneath, there's still a faint glow, still heat. He adds a few pieces of kindling, small dry twigs and wood shavings that catch easily. He blows on the coals gently, steadily, and watches as the kindling begins to smoke and then, slowly, flame. Once the kindling is burning, he adds larger pieces of wood. The fire comes back to life, crackling softly, pushing warmth back into the room. This fire is the heart of the home. It provides heat, it provides light, it cooks the food. It must never be allowed to go out completely, because starting a fire from nothing is hard work. You would need to use flint and steel, striking them together over and over until a spark catches on a bit of charcloth or dry grass. So the fire is tended constantly, kept alive, respected. As the fire grows, the cabin begins to warm. The mother is up now too. She wraps a shawl around her shoulders and moves to the fireplace. She fills the large iron pot with water from a wooden bucket and hangs it over the fire to heat. This water will be used for washing, for cooking, for making tea or coffee if they have any. Outside, the prairie is waking too. You can hear birds beginning to sing. The rooster, if they have one, crows from his perch. The sky is turning from black to deep blue to pale gray. The stars are fading. The world is shifting from night to day, and it does so slowly, gently, giving everyone time to adjust. The children begin to stir under their quilts. They don't leap out of bed the way children might today. They wake slowly, reluctantly, because it's cold and the bed is warm. But they know what's expected. They know the day's work is waiting. So one by one, they push back the quilts and climb out of bed, reaching for their clothes. Everyone dresses quickly near the fire. The clothes are simple. For the father, it's woolen trousers and a linen shirt, maybe a vest. For the mother, a long skirt and a blouse covered by an apron. For the children, smaller versions of the same. Everything is made by hand, either sewn by the mother or traded for with a neighbor. The fabric is sturdy, meant to last. Colors are muted, natural, browns and grays and creams, practical. Once everyone is dressed, there's a quick wash. Hands and faces are cleaned with water from the basin. Hair is combed or tied back. This isn't a long process. Water is precious, especially if it has to be carried from a stream, so washing is efficient, thorough, but quick. Now comes breakfast. The mother has already started preparing it. She takes cornmeal from a sack and mixes it with water and a bit of salt. She shapes this into small cakes and places them in the skillet over the fire. They sizzle and brown, filling the cabin with a warm, toasty smell. These are Johnny cakes, a simple, filling food that can be made quickly. While the cakes cook, she slices some of the bread left from yesterday. If there are eggs, she might fry one or two. If there's bacon or salt pork, she might add a bit of that. But often, breakfast is simple. Johnny cakes, bread. Maybe some butter if the cow has been milked recently and the butter has been churned. Maybe a bit of honey or preserves if they were made last summer. The family gathers at the table. They sit on the benches, and the food is placed in the center. There might be a short prayer of thanks, not elaborate, just a few words acknowledging the food, the day, the chance to continue. Then they eat together, quietly, chewing slowly. The food is warm and filling, and it gives them the energy they'll need for the hours ahead. No one rushes, but no one lingers either, because there's work to be done. Always work to be done. After breakfast, the dishes are cleaned. The mother wipes them with a cloth and sets them back on the shelf. The father banks the fire again, making sure it will keep burning while they're outside. And then, one by one, cool. The sun is just beginning to peek over the horizon, painting the sky with soft pinks and oranges. The prairie stretches out in every direction, endless and open. The grass is wet with dew, and it sparkles in the early light. Everything feels clean. Everything feels new. The father heads towards the animals. The cow needs to be milked. She's waiting in her pen, patient and calm. He brings a wooden stool and a pail and sits down beside her. His hands are practiced. He knows just how to coax the milk from her in steady, rhythmic streams. The sound of the milk hitting the pail is soft and musical. The cow chews her cud and doesn't mind. When the milking is done, he turns the cow out into the small pasture area so she can graze. Then he checks on the chickens. He scatters some grain for them and collects the eggs they've laid overnight. Each egg is a small treasure. He carries them carefully back towards the cabin in a basket. The mother is already in the garden. She moves slowly between the rows, checking each plant. She pulls weeds that have sprung up overnight. She looks for insects that might be eating the leaves. She feels the soil to see if it needs water. Gardening is constant work. The plants need attention every day. But it's peaceful work, quiet work, the kind of work that lets your mind rest, even while your hands are busy. The children have their own tasks. Maybe one of them is fetching water from the stream. They carry a wooden bucket, walking carefully so as not to spill. The stream is a short walk from the cabin, flowing clear and cold over smooth stones. The child kneels down at the edge and dips the bucket in, filling it halfway so it's not too heavy to carry back. Then they make the walk back to the cabin, setting the bucket just inside the door. Another child might be gathering kindling for the fire. They walk around the area near the cabin, picking up fallen twigs and small branches. They break them into pieces that will fit in the fireplace and stack them in a pile near the door. This is simple work, but it's important. The fire must always have fuel. If there's a baby or very young child, they might be with the mother, playing nearby while she works, or they might be napping inside the cabin, safe and warm. Everyone works. Everyone contributes. Even the youngest children have small tasks they can do. This isn't harsh. This is simply how life works out here. The family depends on everyone doing their part, and there's a quiet satisfaction in that, a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. As the morning continues, the sun climbs higher. The air begins to warm. The dew on the grass evaporates. The father might spend the rest of the morning working in the larger field, plowing or planting or harvesting, depending on the season. He works steadily, stopping now and then to wipe his brow or take a drink of water. The work is hard. It makes his muscles ache and his hands rough.
but it's also the work that will feed his family, so he does it without complaint. The mother might spend her morning baking bread for the next few days. She mixes flour and water and a bit of sourdough starter she keeps in a crock. She kneads the dough on the table, pushing and folding, until it's smooth and elastic. Then she shapes it into loaves and sets them near the fire to rise. While they rise, she churns butter. She pours cream into the wooden churn and moves the paddle up and down, until the cream thickens and separates into butter and buttermilk. She scoops out the butter, rinses it with cold water, and packs it into a small crock. Or maybe today is washing day. If it is, she hauls water from the stream and heats it over the fire in a large tub. She adds soap, made from lye and animal fat, and then she scrubs the family's clothes against a washboard. This is hard, tiring work. The soap is harsh on her hands. The scrubbing makes her back ache. But when she's done, she hangs the clean clothes on a line stretched between two trees, and they flutter in the breeze, fresh and clean. The children play when their tasks are done, but their play is simple. They might chase each other through the grass. They might build a small fort from fallen branches. They might wade in the stream, splashing and laughing. They don't have toys the way children do today, but they have imagination. They have the wide open prairie. They have each other. As midday approaches, the family comes back together. The work pauses for a meal. This meal is usually simple, too.
Now, as the evening deepens and the frontier family settles into their nighttime routines, let's take some time to think about the seasons. Because life on the prairie changes with the seasons in ways that people today might not fully understand. The seasons aren't just about weather. They're about survival. They're about preparation. They're about knowing what needs to be done and when. Let's begin with spring. Imagine the prairie in early spring, after the long, cold winter has finally released its grip. The snow, if there was any, has melted. The ground is soft and muddy. The streams are running high with snowmelt, and everywhere, everything is beginning to wake up. The family has been waiting for this, waiting through the dark, cold months, waiting for the earth to thaw, waiting for the chance to plant again, because spring means planting, and planting means hope for the year ahead. The father walks out into the field with his plow. Maybe it's pulled by a horse or an ox if the family is fortunate enough to own one. Maybe it's pulled by the father himself if they don't. Either way, the plow cuts through the soil, turning it over, breaking it up, preparing it to receive the seeds. This is hard physical work. The plow is heavy. The earth resists. Rocks must be removed. Roots must be cut through. The father's muscles strain. His hands blister. But he keeps going, row after row, until the field is ready. Meanwhile, the mother and children are preparing the garden plot closer to the cabin. They turn the soil with hoes and spades. They break up the clumps. They rake it smooth. And then, carefully, they begin to plant. Seeds are precious. They were saved from last year's harvest, or traded for, or brought from back east. Each seed represents potential. Potential for food. Potential for survival. So they're planted with care. Not too deep, not too shallow, spaced just right. The mother knows what to plant and when. She knows that certain vegetables need to go in early, as soon as the danger of frost has passed. Peas, lettuce, onions. She knows that others need to wait until the soil is warmer. Beans, squash, corn. She plants in rows, marking each row with a small stick so she'll remember what's where. The children help. They make the small holes with their fingers. They drop the seeds in. They cover them gently with soil. It's simple work, but it's important work, and they know it.
In the field, the father plants the larger crops, wheat or oats or corn. He walks behind the plow, scattering the seeds by hand, watching them fall into the freshly turned earth. Then he uses a harrow, a tool with metal teeth, to cover the seeds with soil. And then there's nothing to do but wait. Wait and hope. Hope that the rains will come at the right time. Hope that the sun will shine. Hope that the seeds will sprout and grow. The family has done everything they can. Now it's in the hands of nature. Spring is also the time when the animals give birth. The cow, if she's been bred, will have a calf. This is a moment of great importance. A calf means more milk in the future. It means the possibility of another cow to help with the work or to trade. The family watches the cow carefully, waiting for the signs that the birth is near. When the calf finally arrives, they make sure it's healthy and that the mother is caring for it properly. The chickens begin laying more eggs as the days grow longer. This is a welcome change after the winter when eggs were scarce. The family collects the eggs each day, grateful for the abundance. Spring is busy. Spring is hopeful. But spring is also unpredictable. Late frosts can kill the tender young plants. Too much rain can wash away the seeds. Not enough rain can leave them dry and struggling. The family watches the sky constantly, reading the clouds, feeling the wind, trying to anticipate what's coming. But despite the uncertainty, there's a lightness to spring. The days are getting longer, the air is getting warmer, the world is green again. After the stillness of winter, everything feels alive. As spring moves into summer, the work continues. Now it's about tending. The plants have sprouted, they're growing, but they need care. Weeds spring up quickly in the warm weather, competing with the crops for water and nutrients. So the family spends hours in the garden and the field pulling weeds. It's tedious work, work that makes your back ache and your hands dirty, but it has to be done. The mother walks between the rows of vegetables each morning, looking for problems. Are there insects eating the leaves? She picks them off by hand or makes a simple spray from soap and water. Are the plants getting enough water? If not, she and the children carry buckets from the stream, pouring the water carefully at the base of each plant. The father does the same in the larger field. He walks through the rows of wheat or corn, checking for pests, for disease, for anything that might threaten the harvest. He might need to replant in spots where the seeds didn't take. He might need to thin the plants in areas where they're growing too thick. Summer is also the time for other work, work that couldn't be done in the cold. The father might spend some days cutting and stacking hay for the animals to eat in the winter. He uses a scythe, a long curved blade on a wooden handle, and he swings it in a steady rhythm, cutting the tall grass in wide swaths. Then he gathers the grass into piles and lets it dry in the sun. Once it's dry, he stacks it in a protected area near the cabin or the animal pen. He might also work on repairs. Maybe the cabin's roof needs some new shingles where the old ones have worn through. Maybe the pen for the animals needs a new rail. Maybe the plow needs to be mended. Summer is the time to take care of these things while the weather is good and the days are long. The mother has her own summer work. This is the time to make soap if the family needs it. She collects ashes from the fireplace because ashes contain lye, which is needed for soap. She boils the ashes in water to make lye water. Then she mixes the lye water with rendered animal fat, heating it and stirring it until it thickens into soap. It's a process that takes all day and requires careful attention because lye is caustic and can burn the skin. But the soap they make will last for months. Summer is also when the mother might dye fabric or wool. If they have sheep or if they've traded for wool, she'll spin it into yarn. Then she might dye it using natural materials, roots and berries and bark. Each gives a different color: brown from walnut hulls, yellow from onion skins, blue from indigo if they can get it. She boils the dye in a pot over the fire, then soaks the yarn until it takes on the color. Then she hangs it to dry, and eventually she'll weave it or knit it into cloth or clothing. The children are busy too. They help with the weeding, they help with the watering, they help gather berries from the wild bushes that grow near the stream, blackberries, raspberries, whatever they can find. These berries will be eaten fresh or made into preserves for the winter. And in their spare moments, they swim in the stream. The water is cool and refreshing on hot summer days. They splash and play, their laughter carrying across the prairie. These are moments of pure childhood, moments of joy in the midst of all the work. Summer evenings on the prairie are long and beautiful. The sun doesn't set until late, and even after it does, the sky glows with color for a long time. The family might sit outside after supper, enjoying the cooler air. The father might whittle, the mother might sew. The children might chase fireflies, trying to catch them in their hands and watching them glow. These are peaceful moments, moments when the work is done and the day's heat has passed, moments when the family can simply be together, resting in the quiet of the prairie night. As summer fades into autumn, the pace of life changes again. Now it's time for harvest. This is the moment the family has been working toward all year. This is when they'll see if their efforts have been rewarded. The father begins harvesting the wheat or oats. He cuts the stalks with a sickle or a scythe, gathering them into bundles called sheaves. The sheaves are stood upright in the field to dry. Then, when they're dry, he threshes them. Threshing means separating the grain from the stalks. He might do this by beating the sheaves with a wooden tool called a flail, or he might lay them on the ground and have the animals walk over them, using their hooves to break the grain free. Then he winnows the grain, tossing it into the air so the wind blows away the chaff, the light, useless parts, leaving only the heavy, valuable grain.